Hello and welcome to the Building Biology Poddy, where we talk about better buildings to live and breathe in. My name is Jess Kismet and today I am joined by Anthony Benger. Anthony is a carpenter in Melbourne with commitment to craftsmanship, building science and the creation of genuinely healthy homes. But what makes Tony's story especially powerful is he's got personal experience with mould illness. Tony lives with Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome, or CIRS if you want the acronym. This is a debilitating condition triggered by exposure to mould and other biotoxins in the built environment. His diagnosis led him to rethink not just how he lived, but also how he works. In this conversation, we're going to talk about Tony's journey from the challenges of navigating this illness while working to the practical realities of creating low-tox, mould-safe environments. We chat about the tension between conventional practice and healthy design, and what every tradie, builder, designer, architect, and homeowner needs to start understanding about the health risks hiding inside our homes. Welcome, Anthony. Or Tony. Which one?
Tony. Yeah.
Tony.
Thanks,
All
Jess.
right.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. So let's start with your journey. I understand that you've been to uni, then you did a trade, and you have CIRS. So could you step us through a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
Cool. So I had chronic fatigue for about 20 years. Started when I was 12 after a sort of emotional trauma event kicked it off, and then I never really got to shake it. So from sort of age 12 to about 30, early 30, I went down the chronic fatigue route, and traditional medicine didn't have many answers. Kind of went about my life as best I could. And then in 2016, sort of everything came to a head and my health really crashed. So I came back to Australia after being overseas and decided to look into it and see what I could sort of figure out. In that process, in that sort of rabbit hole of what is chronic fatigue, is it real? A lot of the time people would say it was psychosomatic, I was lazy, or it was a mental illness, and you sort of believe that a bit of the time. You think, am I crazy? And, what's going on? No one seems to have an answer. There's no blood test really for it. It's a syndrome. It's a cluster of symptoms. It's really hard to pin down. So having that chronic fatigue sort of, here's this big sort of idea, and then knuckling down into it, there were lots of ideas about what caused it. And one of them was the kind of CIRS, environmental mold toxins. Richie Shoemaker, he was sort of the guy who basically brought it into medical science. I found out I had the HLA gene, so I was a person who's susceptible. I had the VCS contrast test, and so I had probable CIRS. There are a couple of other blood tests, but they were quite expensive to get sort of from the US, and it was like, look, this is probably it. So like many people, I found a sort of mold-free apartment, which was great. And then I got my stuff remediated. And then at the same time, I changed my diet. And sort of, as you know, diet's a big part of CIRS and healing the liver and the gut endotoxin and binders and all that stuff. And in that process of tweaking diet, I did carnivore for a while. And it was about 2 years of sort of serious tweaking. And I found out that I have an allergy to rice, which doesn't really make sense. Rice doesn't have gluten, but there's something in rice that for me particularly triggers the CFS again. And if I have it by accident, even rice starch or as a filler in a supplement, it'll trigger me. And 3 days I am back to brain fog, fatigue, not sleeping, completely different person. And people I know who've seen me sort of have it and then the next day be a different person are kind of amazed. And I don't understand what's going on. I think it has something to do with the gut connection and CIRS and sort of liver not handling everything and bile and stuff. So it's got something to do with that. But at least for me, that's one of the crucial things. So that was 2020 that I figured that out. I felt amazing, better than I'd felt in 20 years. I felt like I had myself back. And so I started my carpentry apprenticeship because in the time that I was sort of sick, I'd gone to uni and done construction management. And I'd come out and realized that I knew a lot about the paperwork side. I knew a lot about the theory, but I didn't know a lot about the building. And there I was trying to tell experienced tradesmen how to do their job, a fresh uni graduate, and it didn't sit, it didn't work. So when I had the opportunity to go back after I'd sort of regained my mental function, my physical function, my acuity, all the things that go when you've got CFS or CIRS. I did a carpentry apprenticeship so that I could actually learn how to build. And that's been an amazing, amazing thing. I'm biased, but I think it is the best trade. And I think the best building professionals are carpenters at some point in their journey, whether it's at the start, whether it's, midway through or whatever it is, they've got that sort of carpentry building sort of background. So another tidbit was I studied with GeoVital in 2017. So they're an Austrian company and they deal with non-native EMF and sort of geopathic stress and stuff like that. So I had been studying the healthy homes kind of area, the building biology area. And then when I moved to Melbourne a couple of years ago, I was pleasantly surprised by the passive house builders and the sort of healthy home builders that are starting here and are really, really trying to improve the Australian status quo. So it's actually quite an interesting group of builders and professionals who are, very active on Instagram, very active trying to educate people and say, look, there are better ways of doing these things. There is science behind CIRS. There is science behind building science and how our homes function. And there's a better way to build. Like we have the info. There are lots of challenges, sure, but I think, my journey has shaped my approach of how I build and what I appreciate in building and what I think is right and a bit outdated. And I'm trying to now piece all of my history together to bring healthy homes as sort of an idea to the forefront, if that all makes sense.
Totally makes sense, and it's quite phenomenal actually to stitch all of that together. The bit that I like, I mean, I don't like that you've been unwell, of course, but the bit that I like about this story is the bit where you went from theory to practical. I really think that it's just such a, like, connecting up the dots between theory and practical. It's part of why I went from where I was in the theory-based energy assessment to practical-based blower door testing, passive house, what's going on site. Because the theory doesn't mean much unless you have a grasp on the practical or what's actually happening inside a building and what's actually being built. So yeah, well, that's you. And to go through all those years of study
Thanks.
as well, that's must have been just tough financially, let alone, just to go through all of that training is quite phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of lucky, I think. A lot of people who go through the CIRS journey, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of familial breakdown. There's a lot of destroyed lives. Like
Yeah.
it's a pretty dark place, and I'm just very lucky that I was able to be supported and had, whatever was helping me to get through it all. But it is a massive financial hit. Like the remediation process for people who, they have worked their whole lives to get these houses, and then they go and get the news that they have to throw out half their things and they can't live in the house they're in. It's a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, I can imagine it's absolutely devastating. And I think there's a lot of people in this space, a lot of like mold techs, for example, a lot of healthy home consultants. In fact, most of them that I've come across have all come from a place of personal experience. And 25% of the population have this gene, this DLA gene that you mentioned. And for the rest of us, I don't believe I have it. I have some weird inflammatory symptoms, but I don't know. But for the people who don't have it, it's sort of like, that whole "is it real" question. But those of you who do have it know without a doubt that it is very definitely real. So yeah, the going back to the DLA gene, you said you found out you have it. How did you find out you have it? Because I actually asked my GP to be tested for it, and she looked at me blankly and said, "I don't know what that is."
So it was a blood test. At the time, I think it was a blood test. Actually, maybe it was a saliva test. But I know it had to be sent off somewhere, and the doctor I saw was actually one of only a few mold literate doctors. So I think if you went to the vast majority of GPs in Australia and said, I want to be tested for this HLA gene, you'd be met with not much in response. I think the sort of tides are shifting and people are sort of now starting to think about it. But yeah, I think you sort of find a doctor who's literate and is on your side and doesn't think you're crazy, and then you go from there.
I think I called it a DLR gene. What's it called? HLR.
It's HLA, I believe it's HLA/DR and HLA/something. I think there's two of them.
DQ or something as well.
Yeah, DQ, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a list of doctors anywhere that you know that people can easily search a doctor in their area?
I'm not sure. The best group that I was involved in was called Toxic Mold Support Australia on Facebook.
That's an
And
excellent website.
Yeah, so I think the website
Yep.
now has been fleshed out a lot more. I think Caleb was one of the administrators who did a lot of work on that. And if you sort of join that group and then go through the posts, you'll be able to find a lot of info. Richie Shoemaker, his stuff's great. His books and his stuff. Mold Lab in Newcastle is who I used for my air testing and hurts me testing and things like that. David Lark, who was the director, I believe, of that, is a wealth of knowledge, but I'm not sure if he's still involved. But yeah, it's sort of a network you get sort of involved in, and then people are trying to help each other. So unless you sort of get into a group like Toxic Mold Support Australia or contact a building biologist or something like that, you might not get too far. So it's once you sort of in contact with people who really know this space, then you can get in touch with the people you need to.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I will do some research. I will find those links and I'll put them in the show notes. And I'll see if I can put together a little bit of a list of resources for anyone listening.
Great.
So with your carpentry work, how did your diagnosis and personal experience with CIRS shape the way you approach building? Because you've been through like you said, the theory of construction management and you became a carpenter on top of that. How have you, because you're not a builder yet, you're a tradesman, you're a carpenter. So you don't have much control over necessarily what goes into the building. Or tell me a bit about your work and how your personal experience with your illness has shaped your work.
Sure. So, yeah, you're right. I don't have that much control in the process. Once I'm sort of on site, the design decisions have been made, the architects and the site teams and everyone sort of decided what's going to happen. And so I don't really get a say in the design process or material selection or, scheduling or, finishing your external membrane and sort of getting watertight before you bring materials in, et cetera, et cetera. And so there are things that I would do differently, but my experience isn't where it's at to be a builder yet. I think I just try and do what little I can on site to protect materials, to keep timber dry, to keep sort of internal structures dry, things like that. It's sort of, clean up sort of sawdust and stuff so that it doesn't hold moisture, doesn't hold water. Do my job as best as I can and sort of imagine that I'm the homeowner and I want people who want to seal off penetrations. If there's a hole in the building wrap, I'm going to put tape on it. When I see it, I'm not going to let it sort of flap in the wind. The passive house, I think, approach to particularly sort of barriers and sort of products like ProClimber and stuff like that, that's amazing. I think your external envelope, getting that dry and watertight as quickly as possible is one of the absolute best things. So there are lots of little things I try and do and in sort of small ways to make the finished product as healthy as possible. But I think it is really a sort of, designers and architects and clients and people in decision-making positions really need to sort of prioritize things to get a healthy home. It's sort of, if I'm the one sort of trying to lead it on site, it doesn't happen.
But are there conversations that happen, like, anyone can speak up, anyone can say, hey, have you thought about this? So is your workplace a place where you feel comfortable sharing your ideas and are they well received?
They are well received, and a lot of the guys that I work with, passive house is part of their repertoire. So even if it's, say, an architectural build that might not have sort of passive house components, or it's a sort of a regular build. A lot of the trades and guys on site that I work with, we all talk the same language, and we all are
Mhm.
really excited about building better and building properly, and bringing in the best knowledge to build. What I find kind of frustrating is the sort of like trying to talk to people who are designing these homes and saying, hey, there's a better way. It's going to cost a little bit more money, but we think it's worth it. And the dollars oftentimes control what actually happens.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it opens up a bigger conversation about what we value in homes in this country, which is a massive conversation.
Yeah.
I think the conversation's happening. There are people who are really passionate about it. The landscape is changing, but it will take time. And, you want to lead people to it, not sort of bully them into it. And so the fact that the conversations are happening is great. I think in Melbourne in particular, I was surprised how much there was in healthy building. I think the building biology course is sort of taught from here. And so there's good signs that the conversations we have every day are slowly going to take over. But I think without the sort of decision makers prioritizing these things, we'll see a lot more of the status quo.
Yeah, it definitely comes from the top. And speaking of the building biology course, you mentioned to me a while back that you were considering doing that too, the
Yeah,
advanced
I'd love
diploma
to.
that I've started. Is that
Yeah,
true?
I'd
Yeah.
love to. Oh, I'd love to. I think CIRS is a massive part, but the building biologists are the best at understanding, healthy building in general and all the aspects that go into it.
Yeah, what started me off on that train was the mold stuff as well, but all the other stuff that goes along with being a building biologist is fascinating, and it's that holistic approach as well. And having the construction background that you've got would be, and even the construction management, that experience all put together would be incredibly valuable to the industry. So let us know if you ever go ahead and do that.
I would love to. It's in the plans for the future. There's a lot to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah,
So it'll happen one day.
yeah, there sure is. We're just talking about the conversations that you're having and the people that you're having them with. All of these people are already on board. What do you think the biggest knowledge gaps are in the broader industry when it comes to environmental illness? And what is it you wish builders, designers, architects, tradesmen, tradespeople, what is it that you wish they understood?
I think I think the biggest, I guess, mindset shift that I had and that I think people need to go through is that your internal sort of home environment has a massive impact on your health and on your life. And it's not a like one-off thing. Like if you can optimize even your bedroom and have 8 hours of good restorative sleep in a somewhat natural environment, your ability to live life as you want to is phenomenally improved. Like the studies about, improving air quality or sort of improving natural light conditions and things like that, and the physiological response that you can get from it. As someone who has gone from being CFS and being severely limited in what I could do in life, and then going through the experiment of one and finding out that this stuff matters, if building professionals understood that intimately and then worked from that place to go, okay, how do we prioritize healthy homes? Like things like sale prices, like how much a home costs, or exotic finishes, or crazy aesthetics. They're all wonderful. They're all great. But if you have a, $10 million moldy house that people who can't sleep a night in without getting a respiratory, you know, postnasal drip or getting a cough or something like that, like, is it worth it? And that's a multi-year process. That's a sort of an amazing feat of architecture or modern building or aesthetics or design or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, we're physiological beings in nature and we have to coexist with nature. And if we don't build with that in mind, then we end up making mistakes. We end up with water damaged buildings. I think, Richie Shoemaker in the 2018 government report on water damaged buildings in Australia, the numbers are shocking of how many, even new builds, are being delivered to clients with water damage in them. And they're not problems that you can fix easily. Everyone argues over where the water's coming from and how we're going to stop it and what way we're going to do it and how we're going to remediate the waterproofing or how we're going to redo this. And it's sort of frustrating that we do have the knowledge, but the execution, for whatever reason, and all the people involved in that process, like every building is an idea in someone's head at the start of it. And then it goes through this process and all these people and all these sort of filters, I guess, and people prioritize different things. And then we end up with what we prioritize. And so I think if you knew that someone's going to live in that house and someone's going to have a life to live and their life's going to be affected positively or negatively by the design decisions, by the details, by you doing that membrane properly, by you doing that waterproofing properly, by you protecting materials when they get delivered to site. There's lots of things, but that fundamental mindset of let's make this house healthy. Like, let's give this person something that's going to support them physiologically. I think if that was part of it, it would be a wonderful, wonderful thing, but it's not really. And I only have that perspective because of what I went through. So it's not really fair of me to expect that of other people, but I would love to see more people go, okay, yeah, like we believe you. This is a thing. Let's make things better. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. And I asked you what you thought. So you are allowed to wish for that. That's a very nice and very important thing to wish for. So let's say there's a builder listening to this who doesn't have CIRS, who has never been through any environmental illness. I'm just going to take us back a little step to the beginning of our conversation where we talked about when your illness kicked off, the years and years of not knowing what was really going on, suffering, not knowing how to fix it, figuring out what the problem was, and then fixing it. Could you take us through perhaps what a normal day might look like for somebody, or not a normal day, a bad day might look like for somebody with chronic fatigue syndrome or with CIRS? Because chronic fatigue syndrome and the brain fog that's associated with chronic fatigue, I don't know what chronic fatigue feels like. I know people who have suffered with it, but don't know what it is. And I imagine there are a lot of people out there who also don't. So if you could please just paint a picture for us as to what that looks like so that we can try and communicate the importance of getting this right.
I think everyone's experience of it is different. The one quote that's always stuck with me that would probably illustrate it is that the healthy person has 100 wishes, 100 dreams. The sick person has one. And I remember I was in an Insight audience. Insight's a SBS program, and they had chronic fatigue people there. And there was I remember a young girl, I think she was maybe 25, and she was in a nursing home because she just couldn't do anything. Spending the entire day in bed and barely having the energy to have a shower. Like that can be a bad normal day for someone with chronic fatigue. Now I was never that bad consistently. I had my moments. Maybe a few hours out of bed and I would try and do some life. But yeah, at its worst, it's that bad. Your brain doesn't work, your body doesn't work, you can't hold down a job in most cases, or maybe you're working part-time or whatever it is. And it's a really dark place. Like the chronic fatigue syndrome isn't a blood test. It's a syndrome of things. And the two areas that are quite common in it are, mental health issues and a lot of sort of gut digestive issues. So I think that's a pretty bleak answer for you, but it is a pretty bleak condition. And for a long time, it wasn't recognized. Like it was sort of a, psychosomatic thing.
So, so chronic fatigue is now medically recognised.
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a syndrome in the same way that CIRS is a syndrome. So it's an umbrella term for a cluster of symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that right? And you eventually connected the dots between your chronic fatigue and CIRS. Did you notice any mold in the buildings that you were living in that 20 years?
Looking back, yes. I was actually in a rental. It was like a 2-story brick veneer, gyprock, typical kind of house. And I did the
Yeah.
the test for it, the hurts me, I think. And it came back and it was just,
The hurts me? What's the hurts me? Hurts
the
me.
hurts me
That
is
sounds awful. Hurts me.
hurts me. Yeah, it does. It's not the best.
Like, sounds like a needle or something.
HERTSMI. I think it's an index of a few of the most widely known problematic molds. So Aspergillus is one of
Okay.
them. I can't remember the other few, but it's basically like here are molds we know that cause issues, like black mold. The notorious black mold is one of them.
The
I think
Stachybotrys.
Stachybotrys, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And this place came back as just water damaged. It was like,
Right.
right. And so I remember going to
But not obviously water damaged. Not obviously. You couldn't see any water damage. It must have happened in the
if you don't
past.
know what to look for, and I didn't at that time, you wouldn't think
Yeah.
it. But now thinking about it, it was like, a light frame construction, 2nd-story bathroom, waterproofing was probably very average, even when it was installed, let alone 5 years later. So that came back as sort of positive. And the advice was, look, like you're not going to get well in this environment. Like no matter how many binders you take or no matter how many supplements you take, you're not going to be able to excrete those toxins that you're ingesting, inhaling,
So just every day.
24/7. Well, you're sleeping there, you're living there, you're breathing there. And those toxins are very pervasive. Like they've been on this earth as long as we have. Like it's not like they're just new and we're just discovering them. They've coexisted with us for a long time. And there are lots of historical references to how bad mold is. I think there's one in the Bible about move out, basically. So anyway,
Really?
so that rental that I was in, the test came back. And so I was able to move into an apartment that I knew was safe basically because of how it was built, because there was no gyprock, it was north facing, lots of sun, there was ventilation in the wall cavity. Bathroom was like a 60s bathroom.
So no gyprock.
It was, so yeah.
No gyprock meaning no porous materials. You had, I think you mentioned to me it was a double brick.
The one I moved into, yeah, double brick. So the sort of
Yeah.
classic 6-pack apartments that are sort of double brick are great, in my opinion, because it means that there's no risk of moldy gyprock.
Yeah. And I think about all the materials that we use to build houses now. It's like, particularly gyprock. We're sort of building Petri dishes, aren't we?
So I have a nickname for those materials, and they're gremlins.
Yeah.
Because they are sort of artificially made, reduced to a moisture content, and then in their sort of state that they're delivered to and made, they're kind of okay. Like they're all right. Like there's a VOC question, there's other questions, but from a sort of cellulose and materials, they're kind of okay. But then once they get wet, like wet gyprock, you can't remediate. Wet was
And
woods,
this is a reference to the 1980s movie, right?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So the 1980s movie, Gremlins.
Those of us who are old enough to understand the reference. I'll put a picture on the screen.
That's my nickname for them because, as you know, you can't remediate a lot of things in a water damaged building. And a lot of them are these products which, they enable us to build faster and quicker. And I think there's definitely a massive place for them. It's just understanding what their weaknesses are and understanding how to protect them and how to build with them.
It's time for a quick sponsor shout out. Today's episode of the Building Sciology Potty is proudly brought to you by our amazing sponsors, Enduro Builders and Climasure. A huge thank you to these incredible businesses for supporting the podcast and helping us spread the word about better buildings to live and breathe in. Your support makes this podcast possible. Please head over to their websites and follow their social pages.
Okay, so what's next for you? What's next for you in terms of your education or your professional trajectory?
So carpentry is the focus. Last year I did a waterproofing Cert 3 and I did a
Mhm.
engineering fabrication Cert 2, which were great. But I think it takes sort of 10 years to be a good residential carpenter. So I've still got a while to go in that. That's the next few years. Building biology, like I would love to know more. I would love to learn particularly from the Europeans, but the building biology course here in Australia would be an excellent stepping stone. And maybe a building sort of designer. Like I said, I think the designers, if you've got a great design and you've got great sort of trades and builders and everything, it can be an incredible experience. If you're starting with a design that doesn't quite sort of think of all these things, then there's a lot of teething issues in trying to sort of get it to work out. So something to do with building design. And then maybe be a builder myself eventually. I think being a
Mhm.
builder now is very, very hard. There's a lot of stresses. There's a lot of abdication of responsibility from people in the building industry, and that responsibility
Yeah.
ending up on the builder. And if they're a good builder and they've sort of been able to navigate it and understand all the liability and all that, then it can be great. But I think a lot of builders take on what they think is one thing and then it turns into another beast. So I'm not sure if or when I'd be a builder, but mainly the sort of design and building biology avenues would be great.
You're going to be the most qualified construction professional in
Maybe,
Australia.
yeah.
Far out. Then you have to learn how to do blower door testing, and then you'll cover everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoy the blower door tests on site because it's a really good way of showing people what's going on. Like you have a number there and you say, hey, you see all this stuff around you. This is what we're trying to get to. This is our, number that we're trying to get to. And, you have the fog tests and then I've been there. I've been on site when they had the blower door test and you've been trying to figure out the holes and, there's a hole here in this sort of steel detail and there's a stall under here and this window wasn't sealed and you try and get that number down and down and down. And it's one of the most illustrative aspects of the entire build,
Excellent.
is we're creating this internal space and we're using air to show you what's going on with it. I think they're great. I think they're awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of these things, they're all invisible. The air tightness, even the mold can be invisible. The VOCs in the air, CO2, it's all invisible. Quantifying all of that stuff is just it's just fascinating. The numbers game and the information that those numbers can give you, uh, you know, it's just fascinating when you really care about building performance.
Definitely.
You work with builders who are already converted. Have you worked with any tradesmen or builders who weren't?
Yeah, and it's a sort of a level of conversion. I think there are levels to building biology
Mhm.
and, having a understanding of air tightness is great, but then the sort of next level of that is, okay, well, if we're going to build airtight, then we need to have mechanical ventilation. Then we need to have sort of an understanding of what materials are going in there so that the off-gassing profile is okay.
Mhm.
And so I think the vast majority of the industry doesn't have the exposure to these principles and these ideas. And so, they're not going to know what they've never come across or what no one's ever introduced them to. And then, clients as well. So, a client comes to you and they're sort of the boss in what they want and you can guide them, but their sort of idea of what they want at the end of the day is really going to affect how that builds out. So I think all those aspects mean that there are a lot of builders and they run the gamut. There are some that are really, really amazing and pushing the boundaries and getting into sort of healthy homes and really thinking, how can we do this better? It's great. But this sort of stock standard builder, I think, has a way to go to understand the healthy homes sort of angle or building biology sort of doctrine.
Yeah. So you're obviously somebody who really loves to learn and you search out all of that learning. What do you I think one of the biggest gaps in the industry is how all of the changes in the building codes and Australian standards and all of those actually communicated to trades. Not every, there are a lot of trades who didn't finish high school or they're not readers. They work with their hands because they're good with their hands. How do you think, what do you think that could be done to better improve that communication or to better equip trades and builders with the knowledge they need? Because as you said, you know, clients have set ideas in their minds about how they want their house to be. And if they make a decision that puts the builder who doesn't necessarily understand the risk that they're building into the house because of that changing decision by the client, it's not their fault. But they didn't have you don't know what you don't know. So my question is, what is your opinion or thoughts on how that education can be better spread around to the trades?
It's a hard problem to solve. There's a couple of points that I think I should address. One is I did my waterproofing certificate, and we had the Australian standards as our sort of Bible of what to look at. And there's a lot of jargon and a lot of legalese in those standards that isn't readily pick-upable. I don't know if that's a word. Readily
Totally.
apparent to someone who didn't finish high school. Now, they're amazing with their hands and they can produce amazing stuff. But if you give them a one-page sort of legalese on maybe a water stop detail, how are they going to learn that? So the app that I really, really like is called Tools.
Yes.
And it visually shows the NCC, sort of the old BCA, you know, the Australian standards and things into a 3D model. And I've been telling everyone about this app and saying, look, if you want to convey what you want, show an image. Like, go into this app, open it up and say, this is what I want. I want minimum whatever, or I want this fall, or I want this. And so to teach the trades to produce better details, use something like that that's going to give them the detail. Draw something for them. A lot of guys won't take that advice, but the guys who want to improve or want to do better will take that training and they'll run with it and they'll become better and you'll get a better result. You know, that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it, I think, is make education easier. The Australian standards shouldn't cost an arm and a leg. It shouldn't cost you free. It shouldn't cost you $2,000 to get all your documents to be a builder. Shouldn't. And then the changes, and then they update them, and then you get the new one, and all these costs, then, you know, they're a barrier to entry for learning. Like, if we want the builders to be better, help them, you know, help them.
Right.
Like all these things about, you know, builder goes bust. It's like, some of them go bust because they deserved it. They didn't understand the business. They got themselves in too much trouble. They underquoted, whatever it was. That's a large part of it. But a large part of it is that it's become a really, really hard thing to execute successfully. And the guys who go into it aren't usually from highly educated backgrounds. Like, it's not really, builder isn't the highest, I guess, profession in Australia. You know, when I was at school, and when I was going through, doing a trade, becoming a builder wasn't really something that you aspired to unless you knew that that's what you wanted to do. It wasn't, you could be a builder and you could have a great life and you could build amazing things. So help the people who are in that position of trying to deliver the homes, you know, make the Australian standards free, help them get educated. There are a lot of really hungry, really clued on builders who want to do better and they have a hard time doing it because it's really hard to get educated. It's really hard to get help. It's a really hard profession to excel in. You know, and that's just kind of the nature of it in this day and age. So, you know, helping everyone from the tradesmen up to the designers, everyone involved, if there's a focus on education and helping them to succeed, that'd be great. That'd be awesome.
It's not just builders though. Like, I know plenty of architects who don't understand, you know, the building code changes. That's a tertiary degree.
I know plenty of trades who could design better details than some architects.
100%. You know, no disrespect to architects.
No disrespect to architects. Like, aesthetically, no. Like, the stuff they come up with is incredible. But a lot of it just doesn't work in practicality.
Yeah. And it's that theory and practice void again. But I'm really glad you brought up the Tools app, because this app, I can't believe the building code wasn't drawn in pictures from the very beginning. And I actually think that this app, it's growing, but it's growing slowly. And I don't understand why. Because if you give I don't understand why it's not growing a lot more quickly, because if you ask, I work with a bunch of builders, and you ask them a question about how a building goes together, and they'll get out a pencil and they'll draw it for you. Like, here's
Yeah.
this and here's that, and there's where the flashing goes and blah, blah, blah. And they're all very visual, practical people. So why is the documentation written like it's in Swahili?
Well,
You know, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think it's a tool in, dispute litigation. So you need a clause, you need something that you can cite as evidence. And there are some pictures and drawings in the standards, but not to the level that tools does it. And so I think the Australian standards and the sort of literature is serving one purpose that doesn't really translate to the trades on site. And I think tools is slowly growing, like you're saying, because it is such a good product. And I've seen it get better and better sort of in the last couple of years. When I was doing my Cert 3 training, like, we had the Australian standards and then I had tools. And all I had to do was look at tools and then cross-reference to the legalese, and it all made sense. I was like, cool, like, that's what they're talking about. That's what they're talking about. Perfect. Like,
it's got all the code references in there. Like, it's got the clauses all in there.
Yeah.
It's right there. So if you're listening and you haven't heard of the Tools app, and you're a tradesman or a builder who struggles keeping up with the building code changes, go and have a look.
Yeah.
Go and have a look. Google Tools app. Go to the link in the show notes, and it's a paid subscription, but I think worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Do you come across anybody in your work or in your life that you think might have mold illness? And if you do, what do you say to them?
All the time. There's that saying of, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. When I found out about CIRS and when I started understanding the sort of profound implications of your home environment and the air quality and all that, I started telling everyone and saying, I can't believe it, and you must listen to me, and trying to sort of shout it, I guess. And it didn't really work. And I think that mindset shift is a hard one for a lot of people to go through. So I see people, people I know very well, people I've known for years, people I've known basically my whole life. And I say, look, like, this is a potential thing that can affect you. And I think you should look into it. And these people have, fatigue and brain fog and respiratory symptoms and sort of recurrent issues. Like, when your immune system goes, into a state like that, it shows up in lots of different ways. But you sort of see, like, the bags under their eyes and they're tired. No, I haven't been sleeping, and, like, the house is this or whatever it is. And so I just try and open up that sort of question mark of, okay, is my house part of it? Is that something I should be looking at? But I find a lot of people are very hesitant to spend even the money on a building biologist or a sort of a test. It's like, okay, so pay someone a little bit of money to come in and just test your house. Like, that's it. They're not going to destroy anything. They're not going to take anything apart. They're just going to give you some advice. And they all sort of push back. And I think, I don't know exactly what it is, but they just haven't connected the dots in their head yet. And so I think all these people that I see that are having those issues, I try and tell them my story. I try and answer their questions. I try and plant the seed of maybe this, but it's such a foreign concept that illness and your home environment are connected that it just doesn't land for a lot of them. And unfortunately, I think, it takes a really painful situation or a really aware person or sort of open-minded sort of person to entertain the idea and go, okay, well, maybe, I should try this. I mean, myself, I came from a sort of medical family. And so I tried so many conventional things and so many angles, and I did all these things, and, it took me a long time to start connecting the dots. So to those people, I sort of just try and nudge them and sort of lead by example. I think that's what you can kind of do. And then when they're ready or desperate or, they've exhausted all other options, then they sort of are more open to it.
I have a couple of people in mind right now who I've had these very same conversations with. excuse me, one of which probably doesn't take it seriously or seriously enough to actually act on what I've told her. And the other one who is absolutely bamboozled by the cost of getting tests and seeing a functional medicine doctor and all of the medicines that might go along with it, the testing. It's, I asked you before about your pathway in discovering your own susceptibility to the biotoxins in mold, because I'm trying somehow, and I'm sure other people have done this, but I'm trying somehow for anyone who comes across this podcast or any of my work to break down that resistance. Like somehow make it easier. This is how you get medically diagnosed. This is how you test your house. These are the people who can do it, like step by step. And I'm trying to get together people who can help me kind of do that. But yeah, that resistance to the idea, just like the resistance to, any of the concepts that I talk about, air tightness in my daily work, it's, you don't know what you don't know. And once you know, you can't unknow. And so I'm trying to
everything changes.
Yeah. And I'm trying to break down that point between not knowing and knowing to open up that exploratory pathway for people to maybe find a solution to what's going on. Because it's, like you said, the family breakdowns and the mental health struggles, it's not just physical health, it's can't work, can't take care of the children. What the heck is wrong with me? Am I dying? Mood disruption in kids, and who knows if any of this stuff is actually, if it's related. I just wish there was an easier way to connect those dots.
It's a hard landscape to wrap your head around. Like to connect the dots in your head is one thing, and then to go through the process is another. And what can be a really, what's the word? I guess problematic part of it is that, say you're a family and one of the parents has the mold gene and is susceptible, and another parent isn't, and is sleeping in exactly the same environment.
And they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. And then, because it's a syndrome and it's sort of hard, not well understood by the vast majority of GPs and not really part of the landscape, that one sort of parent might go to their circle, and their circle reinforces that, no, it's not an issue. And then this person goes onto the internet and finds out, yes, it is an issue. And there's this fracture that occurs between those two people. And so not only are you fighting against an illness, which is draining you of all your energy, of all your mental capacity, maybe you've got 2 hours of brain power in a day, and that's all you've got. And you're meeting up against this resistance because it's not part of the conversation and because people don't connect the dots. And so that toxic mold support is great. There's lots of people on there who've sort of seen the light at the end of the tunnel and have gone through the process and said, look, like, just chuck out that house. Like, I know you paid a lot of money for it and you're attached to it, but unfortunately just chuck it out. And that's a hard thing to navigate. It's just one of the hard things to navigate. But I think having a conversation about it and understanding it, and then connecting the dots, and with the information that you're putting out there, being connected to people who've been through it and can guide you is massive. Because if you're getting resistance from everyone in your circle that's saying, no, it isn't an issue, or we don't understand, or go see a psychiatrist, go and get an SSRI because you're, this, whatever.
What's an SSRI?
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It's one of the first line of drugs, basically.
For mold illness?
Depression.
Okay.
Like chronic fatigue.
Right. Okay.
All the mental health sort of stuff goes along with chronic fatigue hand in hand. But yeah, you're crazy. Go get drugged up. And so maybe there is a component of that, but at least look at the mold, at least get it addressed, get a mold test, a few $100 and you can get a Hertzme or an Ermi test done, and it'll start you on the process of going, okay, maybe this is something that we can control that will affect the health of everyone in the house. I mean, even if you're not mold susceptible, having that biotoxin in the environment is having a deleterious effect on your health. Like, people can live in these moldy environments and be genetically susceptible, but then it's a event or a culmination of things or, a bunch of things all together that then tip them over, and their sort of scales tip over, and that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so you're doing everyone in the house a favor, even if they're not genetically susceptible, by improving the air quality, by sleeping better, getting better oxygenation, by getting a proper night's sleep. Like, the amount of people that don't get a proper night's sleep.
100%.
Think of air quality, and that's just one aspect of healthy building, like the CIRS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you with my
it's just
there.
It's a starting point to the whole thing. Like, I think the CIRS, understanding CIRS and how your body is affected by the environment you live in, then opens up the whole gamut of building biology of all the other things, like, your light, your water, your the materials you use, all these things. Like, there's lots, as you know, like in the building biology realm, it's there's a lot. But just start with something. Start with a mold test. Start with a dust swab, a Hertzme, Ermi, whatever you want to get. You can have control of your health by having control of your home environment. I know this is sort of a building industry podcast, but anyone who's at home, like, you don't need approval from someone to just start researching it and start going, okay, like, maybe if I improve the air quality in my bedroom, I'll sleep better.
Yeah, there's lots of marketing around meditation and sleep apps and, ways to soothe yourself to go to sleep, because there's a lot of insomnia issues around. You don't ever really fear anything about the quality there in your bedroom to help you sleep.
Not really. No.
Or anything else that could be coming out of the walls. It's not, those dots aren't connected. So yeah, thank you very much for your input on that. I have one last question I ask all of my guests. And that is, out of everything that you've learned and everything that you've experienced in your career and life to date, what is the one thing that you would like people to know?
A lot of health is kind of outsourced. And I followed that path for a long time. It was like, okay, I want to be healthy. Let me, get this person or go see this doctor or whatever it is. Where you spend your life most of the time is your house. Start owning that area and optimizing it for health, and you will see an incredible return on investment. I don't think it's possible to accurately quantify that over a lifetime, over the different people who are in the house, especially kids. Like, you get one shot really at child sort of development. And I know I'm not a parent myself, but I know parents who say they would do anything for their kids. And if you can start to connect the dots between where you live and your health, and sort of start to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, you'll find that there is lots and lots and lots that you can do. Now, it's the internet, so there's lots of conflicting opinions and there's lots of debate, and it's often overwhelming to navigate. But coming from someone who was sick, the cents on the dollar that you would pay to improve your environment, you would, like, it doesn't compare to how much you would pay to try and get your life back once it's taken away from you. Like, again, like, a healthy person has 100 wishes and a sick person has one. And I would just love people to understand that your home environment has a huge impact on how you show up in life. Like, if there's a version of you that wants to be a certain way in life, then making your home support you in that, because you are a natural being, you're a physiological entity and you live in nature. You can't live against nature and expect to thrive. Start with your home. Like, you buy things for your home all the time. think about what goes into those products and what they're going to do to you, and whether that's supporting your health or going to take away from it. Like, money isn't the only value in this equation. Yes, it's a necessity to understand the dollars and cents of it. But when you look at how you build your homes, what things you put in them, the environment that you put your body through and your relatives and your family through day in, day out, like while you're asleep, if you can have a nice bedroom that gives you restorative sleep, your quality of life will dramatically change. And that's just one part of the home. So I think that's it. I think connect the dots between where you live and how you show up in life, healthy or not, and the true cost of being sick, not just in dollars, but in life lost. And start to go down that rabbit hole. Like, it is hard and it's not easy. And the vast majority of professionals in, the building industry, this is sort of a newer concept to them, but the information's out there and the people are out there. And once you start down the rabbit hole, you'll find like-minded people who are also interested in it. And there's a great joy from changing your circumstances and taking control of what you can control. And one of them is where you live. And, when you sit down at the end of a busy day, or you spend time with family on a Sunday or whatever it is, if you can do it in a place that is supporting your health, that's a wonderful, wonderful place to be. Coming from someone who's lived in all different environments, like the peace of mind and the joy from being in a healthy environment, in a healthy built environment, is amazing. It's amazing.
And that's what it's all about, is peace of mind.
Yeah.
Peace of mind.
Like, not having that stress of the unknowns about, the mold or whatever it is. Like, knowing that you've optimized your environment and you've done what you can control is an amazing, it's worth the hassle of going through the whole process.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal for me personally is it's something I've sort of focused on a lot in my life, is just simply peace of mind, emotionally, physically, all of these ducks in a row, and just, that's the goal. Whether or not we achieve it or not is another thing, but that is always the end goal. Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience with me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to share it.
That is all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There'll be another episode in a fortnight, so if you would like to listen into the types of conversations that I have all the time, please subscribe on your chosen platform. Rate the show, leave a comment, whatever you like, share with your friends and family. I'd love for you to spread the word about the Building Psychology Potty. There's a link in the episode description where you can head to a landing page, and there are some show notes there with relevant links and a full transcript of the show as well, and also links to my socials. So if you're not already, I'd love for you to follow along there too, as I share lots of building science and building biology tips. There's also a contact page where you can send me an email or even a voice message. So if you've got questions or suggestions or guest ideas, I'd love to hear from you. I want to know what you want to know, so please get in touch with me. Thanks again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, so until then, happy healthy building.